I've been called a radical fascist and almost a Hitlerite. Actually, I have one earnest conviction in this war. It is that no other war in history has so definitely lined up the forces of arbitrary oppression and dictatorship against those of human rights and individual liberty. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, 8th of April. No, it's not 2025, bro. You're going to have to find me a different date for that. But it's close enough for government work. Wow.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I will try to get through this monologue without being shot dead by an Antifa sniper. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Glad to have you with us tonight. And once more, we open with a special programming advisory. The golden age of Western civilization news roundup will again be preempted this week so that we can bring you another edition of the worst people in the whole wide world weekly update. And if I'm being honest, you might just be stuck with the WPWWWU permanently from here on out because, let's be honest, I enjoy writing it more than the news roundup, and it seems to get more views on Monday. And also, I just think it's fun saying WPWWWU. And with that advisory having been issued, we begin this week's update in exactly the same place where we ended last week's update, with the governor of California, a vile, loathsome, diabolical creature and part-time podcaster by the name of Gavin Christopher Newsom. When last we left Mr. Newsom, he was issuing not very thinly veiled terrorist threats toward the Homeland Security Secretary, and he really hasn't stopped issuing veiled terrorist threats in the intervening 7 days since. The man seems to really quite enjoy issuing veiled terrorist threats, even as numerous left-wing terror attacks continue to rock the country on a weekly basis, hell, almost a daily basis now. In fact, Governor Newsom seems to spend so much of his time issuing terrorist threats and then furiously denying that his terrorist threats actually were terrorist threats that one wonders where he finds the time to perform his duties as governor in between fomenting left-wing political violence and hosting his dumb vanity project podcast, the point of which was supposed to be to position himself as a pragmatic centrist and bolster his chances of becoming president, so he would appear to be sort of operating at cross purposes with himself right now. I mean, I ain't no fancy political consultant, But if you go record your little podcast and cosplay as a Mr. Centrist Unifier type of guy, and then afterward you blast out a bunch of tweets about how various people in the Trump administration are authoritarian fascists who should probably be killed as soon as possible, I feel like the messages you're sending out are, shall we say, slightly mixed. But let's not pretend this maniac doesn't know exactly what the hell he's doing. We know enough about Mr. Newsom and his impeccable credentials as a San Francisco socialist to know the pragmatic centrist unifier song and dance he does on the stupid podcast is nothing but pure cynical cosplay. We know the terrorist threats that are coming hot and heavy out of his press office are more illustrative of what he really thinks. We know that when he issued that veiled threat to Secretary Noem late last week, we knew he was trafficking in the exact same sort of rhetoric that got Charlie Kirk murdered. And now this week, by all appearances, he wants Stephen Miller to be murdered next. Stephen Miller, who of course is the deputy White House chief of staff and also happens to be Jewish. How did Newsom's press office refer to Stephen Miller this week? First, they referred to him as a member of the SS, the organization that perpetrated the Holocaust, and then they referred to him as a fascist, which is a very classy thing to say about a Jewish man, to smear him as a member of the same criminal organization that gassed the members of his religion by the millions in an industrialized effort to eradicate Judaism from planet Earth for all time. It's a very strong look, Gavin Newsom, very strong indeed. It really bolsters your credentials as a pragmatic centrist unifier who wants to live in a tolerant, pluralistic society. But here's an idea. Maybe don't have your press office blast out tweets that would be upvoted by Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich and Adolf Eichmann if they had Twitter accounts. Actually, no. Maybe they wouldn't upvote it. They would like it that you are calling for Jews to be exterminated, but they probably would also be deeply offended at you characterizing those same Jews as members of the Schutzstaffel. But who knows? Maybe you're so busy fantasizing about Trump administration officials being killed, you didn't give much of a thought to any type of intellectual consistency. And again, where does this guy actually find the time to do governor things? Does he even do governor things? I can't say. And I live in his state, for Christ's sake. It doesn't appear as though he does, though. Not a single thing has come out of his press office in the last 2 weeks, except for terrorist threats against members of the Trump administration. And I, for one, am old enough to remember a former, simpler time when a governor's press office would issue statements like, hey,
Brother, I think we lost your sound. Can you hear him on the in YouTube world? 'Cause I can't hear. It says your mic is muted, which means it probably disconnected. Speak. It says it's unmuted, and I still can't hear you. Yeah. All right. Work on that, and we'll get to the next part as soon as you get back. All right. You can even do it from the top again if you want to. I don't mind. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Today, we're going to discuss a movie, as usual. It might take the whole show. It's an excellent film. And if you haven't seen a good, excellent, not quite war movie recently, then have I got a treat for you. We are also going to discuss something to do with acetaminophen, something to do with, what was the other thing? Oh, yeah. We're going to discuss some of the various heinous things that's been happening, including this most recent. I'm not even sure what to quantify this as. It was obviously some form of mass shooting, but the supposed alleged perpetrator seems to be odd. You might have to drop out and come back in, bro.
You still not have me?
There you are. Cool.
Where did you lose me exactly? I'll try to get to the spot.
Give me 2 seconds and I'll
I apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. I have no explanation for the technical glitch.
Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich and eliminated, but they probably would administration officials time to do governor's office in the last. It's unmuted and statements like, hey,
Right there.
and I, for one, am old enough to remember a former, simpler time when a governor's press office would issue statements like, hey.
That's
Okay,
almost
almost got it. Just give me a moment.
that is almost cryptic. When a governor's press office would issue a statement like, hey, and then they muted you.
Who knows what came next?
You are in California, bro. Like, watch for the red lights. All right.
You ready? Can I pick up? All right. And now this week, by all appearances, he wants Stephen Miller to be murdered next. Stephen Miller, who is the Deputy White House Chief of Staff and also happens to be a Jewish man. How did Newsom's press office refer to Stephen Miller this week? First, they referred to him as a member of the SS, the organization that, of course, perpetrated the Holocaust, and then they referred to him as a fascist, which is a very classy thing indeed to say about a Jewish man, to smear him as a member of the same criminal organization that gassed the members of his religion by millions in an industrialized effort to eradicate Judaism from planet Earth for all time. It's a very strong look, Gavin Newsom. It's a very strong look indeed. It really bolsters your credentials as a pragmatic centrist unifier who wants to live in a tolerant, pluralistic society. But here's an idea. Maybe you don't have your press office blast out tweets that would be upvoted by Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich and Adolf Eichmann if they were around now and had Twitter accounts, but actually maybe they wouldn't upvote it. They would very much like it that you were calling for Jews to be exterminated, but they probably would also be deeply offended at you characterizing those same Jews as members of the Schutzstaffel. But who knows? Maybe you were so busy fantasizing about Trump administration officials being killed, you didn't give much of a thought to any type of intellectual consistency. And again, where does this guy actually find the time to do governor things? Does he even do governor things? Well, I can't say. And I live in his state. It doesn't appear as though he does, though. Not a single thing has come out of his press office in the last 2 weeks, except for terrorist threats against members of the Trump administration. I am old enough to remember a former, simpler time when a governor's press office would issue statements like, hey, these are the pieces of legislation that I signed this week, or hey, I just issued such and such proclamation honoring this person or this event, but not anymore, not in California. Our governor's press office is rather like listening to Robert De Niro's Al Capone in The Untouchables. I want this pretty boy Stephen Miller dead. I want his wife dead. I want his kids dead. I want his dog dead. I want his house burnt to the fucking ground. And then he beats some guy to death with a baseball bat for chuckling at him too much. But there are so many worst people in the whole wide world of awfulness in the world's ocean. And alas, the boat of this monologue is so very small. But I want to give a special mention to the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, a man whose name is, I believe, Ali Muhammad Jihad, who informed his city's non-Muslim residents this week that he doesn't really give two squirts of piss about them or their concerns, that they are no longer welcome in the city in which they and their forebears have been living and paying taxes for numerous generations, that they should get the fuck out just as soon as they possibly can, and that when they do, he and the city's Muslim ruling class are going to throw a parade just as soon as they are gone. The filthy kafir infidels, concerned citizens who came to the city council meeting this week were alarmed by a couple of recent developments. Number one, the recent renaming of one of Dearborn's major thoroughfares after a Muslim imam by the name of Mahmoud Akbar Jihad Mahmoud Jihad Muhammad, whose written works are overflowing with loving, tolerant expressions of religious pluralism like, fight the infidels with stones, fight them with knives, fight them with bullets, fight them with planes. And if that doesn't work, fight them with the butt ends of broken beer bottles, because that's all we've bloody well got. That last bit being a loving nod to the great Islamic warlord Winstoni Muhammad Jihad al-Churchilli, which the filthy kafirs, concerned citizens, took as the city government endorsing violent terrorist rhetoric, to which Mayor Jihad Muhammad Jihad replied, nope, nothing violent about that quote, nothing at all. You are clearly just a bunch of dastardly homophobes. The other citizen complaint was, we keep getting woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning because the local mosques are blasting out their calls to prayer on external loudspeakers, And in point of fact, the local noise ordinance explicitly prohibits the use of external loudspeakers between the hours of 9 p.m. and 7 a.m., which caused Mayor Jihad Muhammad Jihad to exclaim, "Stop being such a bigoted, racist bigot, or I will order Police Chief Khalil Jihad Ahmed Muhammad Jihad al-Dirborni to arrest you immediately and sell you to the fucking Barbary pirates, inshallah." And speaking of once great American cities where Americans no longer have the right to live in peace, let's put the city government of Portland, Oregon, not just the pussy douchebag mayor of Portland, Oregon, but everybody in the city government on this week's worst people list, because nobody has earned it more than they have. We could also arguably add the state government of Oregon to the list if we felt like casting the net more broadly, because none of these people seem in the least bit bothered that, as a practical matter, fucking Antifa has been the de facto city government of Portland for upwards of half a decade now. You all remember the George Floyd Summer of Love in 2020, when the riots went on longer in Portland than they did anywhere else. They actually had a stretch of, which I believe was a world record, over 100 nights in a row in which the Portland PD officially declared a riot, which is kind of a meaningless distinction anyway, because the Portland PD kind of bends over backward to never interfere with whatever Antifa wants to do. Antifa in Portland is effectively a law unto itself. To all intents and purposes, Portland is the functional equivalent of a dusty Mexican border town where the local drug cartel wields all of the real power. And the ostensible city government is just sort of a neutered figurehead that only exists to kind of keep up appearances. You don't need to take this reporter's word for any of this. The videos are all over YouTube. You may have seen some of them before. It's not unusual in certain areas of Portland for pedestrians innocently walking down a public sidewalk to be accosted by black-clad Antifa shitbags and be challenged to produce their ID in order to prove that they are not feds or news reporters, as if it is any of Antifa's goddamn business whether you are a fed or a news reporter. And when you object to the Antifa shitbags who just accosted you, when you refuse to comply with their demands because this is supposed to be America, and I am supposed to be able to use a public sidewalk without being stopped and accosted and harassed by terrorists in black pajamas, when they take umbrage at your insolence and your noncompliance and beat you within an inch of your life and you are left lying in a pool of your own blood, good luck getting the Portland PD to take a report on the incident, much less to arrest anybody, much less prosecute them. And even if they get a wild hair up their ass one day and they do arrest your attacker, well, you know how this song and dance goes. Some woke idiot judge will turn them loose without bail because cash bail is evil and bad, don't you know? And even if charges do happen to be filed, they will be quietly dropped within a matter of weeks, because all of the city and state government officials in Portland live in fear of doing anything that might piss off their real masters, the Antifa shitbags. There are a couple of federal immigration detention centers in the city of Portland, and you know pretty much how this story goes. They have been under siege on a nightly basis ever since Trump reassumed the presidency back in January. Every night, all night, they are screaming and yelling and blasting megaphones and setting off explosives, harassing and menacing every employee who enters or leaves the building. And when they are feeling really frisky, they do that same fun trick that they first perfected at the Portland Federal Courthouse back during the Summer of Love, when they tried to glue all of the doors shut and then burn down the building with everyone inside. The Portland PD, well, don't bother calling them. They won't even send a squad car to do a drive-by because, after all, they work for the terrorists. The people in the apartment buildings across the street who are trying to innocently get a good night's sleep so they can go to work in the morning, and whose kids are innocently trying to get a good night's sleep so they can go to school in the morning, who are being kept awake all night, every night by this never-ending riot, well, that's just too fucking bad for them. Antifa is the ruling authority in the city of Portland, and anybody who doesn't like it should just go ahead and move the fuck away. But President Trump has decided that he is just about done tolerating this industrialized anarchy and lawlessness, as well he should be, because Americans are supposed to have certain unalienable rights. And among these rights are the right to use public roadways and public sidewalks without being harassed and accosted by assholes in black pajamas, the right to be able to sleep at night, the right to expect that you are a victim of assault and battery, your attacker will be duly arrested and prosecuted and punished for his crime. And if the local government and the state government have taken the decision to abdicate their responsibility to protect these rights and to do any of the things that governments are traditionally supposed to do, then the president and the federal government don't really have any choice but to step in and do something about it. Criminals do not have the right to conduct reigns of terror in American cities. To borrow a favorite pet phrase of the left, that is not who we are. I hope Trump sends in so many troops, it makes everybody's head spin. I hope these people are dealt with, and they're dealt with the utmost ruthlessness. I want every single one of these assholes rounded up, charged with every federal crime they can possibly be charged with, and imprisoned for the maximum possible length of time that they can be imprisoned. Every Antifa shitbag is now a member of an officially proscribed domestic terrorist group, and that's exactly how they should be dealt with. The good people of this country are well and truly done with this nonsense, way past done. In fact, the violent leftist tyranny has to be crushed with extreme prejudice wherever it exists. It has to be stamped out. These people need to be made an example of. If your social media history is full of Antifa shit, if there is a digital record of you participating in Antifa terrorism, then you should expect to die in a federal prison. That is what the decent law-abiding citizens of this country are entitled to expect. And it is the fervent hope of this reporter that President Trump fulfills that expectation and fulfills it good and hard. Not just in Portland either, but in every city where the local authorities have abdicated their duties. If the Democrats and the fake news media cry and moan about it and call it an authoritarian invasion, their words mean absolutely nothing to me. You are either on the side of civilization or you are not. You have to pick one. I am done. That is all I've got. This has been the WPWWWU. I now transmit you into the firm but loving embrace of my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, the one and only Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Blast Radius, where we are going to discuss The Last Rifleman. We're going to cover a few of the more heinous events that's happened in our country in the past few days, and we're probably going to complain an awful lot about what some of those things were and probably talk some trash about them because they fucking suck, to be honest. And without any further ado,
because if there is anything we love on this program, it is complaining about things we don't like.
Right? Like, screw those guys. We don't like them. Anyway, I'm kind of in bed with you on that one, dude. Like, me and you can get along famously about it. The thing is, we have been under a discretionary occupation for 9 years, 8 years. I will give leeway on the first few years of it just being protests, right? But
Yes.
When the bricks started showing up and nobody knew who brought them, when they started all wearing the same uniform and they all started having the mass-produced signs, all of that became quite industrialized quite quickly. And at that point in time, I believe it has become a state-funded operation. Not sure by what state or what state of state, if you catch my drift, but that enters into some interesting legal RICO territories where, like you were saying, providing material support to an enemy, foreign or domestic, does land you firmly within the Sedition Act, if I'm not mistaken. And
It does.
Also RICO if you're sending them material support. And so this may become a very interesting legal consideration in our future. And I want to propose an additional question. Ice and masks.
Oh, I do have an opinion on that.
Yes,
that,
and I
that
would
is
like
that
to
is
cover
that is currently the world's biggest red herring, because let's talk about the implication that sends. California just this week or last week, one or the other, passed a bill saying, as if they have any ability to enforce it, but they passed a bill saying we don't want ICE agents conducting their duties while wearing masks, which, first of all, is a bit of a rich thing coming from a guy who just 4.5 years ago was arresting people for not wearing masks. But setting that aside, is the implication of this action to say that you wouldn't have any problem with ICE performing their enforcement duties if they weren't wearing masks? Because come on, dude, we everybody here knows that is not the case. We know that if they were not wearing masks and they were showing their face, you would be every bit 100% just as opposed to everything they are doing to enforce their statutory responsibilities under the laws that Congress passed. And it's a red herring that it is a distraction. You would be just as opposed, and you would just find another reason to oppose it. It is legislative tofu. Let's call it that. It is just there to take up space.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm not discounting a single word of it. But I am against the concepts of law enforcement of any description, government of any description, wearing masks, except for as protective clothing, in the sense of like tactical protection, shrapnel, that kind of stuff.
And I think most people are. We didn't used to be a country where that needed to be done.
Things like SWAT teams, insertion teams, these people fully masked up, that's fine. But I see no problem with sticking a badge number very visibly on their uniform somewhere so that someone using a camera filming these boys can identify that particular officer, because that is the important part. And I don't remember who it was that said it, but rather 100 criminals go free than a single innocent man suffer in prison.
I've never been a big fan of that one.
I know,
but I see your point.
The point being here that whether you agree that illegal immigrants get due process is completely beside the point. If you can't identify the officer that infringed upon your rights, you do not get due process or a redress of your government. And there will be a few citizens picked up in this type of stuff, and those people certainly deserve due process. But you're not going to be able to hold the individual accountable that was accountable in a confused environment. Say there's some video of the particular event and you're the citizen and you need to redress your government. That video is virtually useless besides proving the event took place, because you can't identify the people.
We do keep hearing claims that citizens are being caught up in immigration sweeps and taken into detention, but I still have yet to hear any specific examples of that happening. And I might be wrong. There might be specific examples. Maybe you've heard of some and I haven't.
No,
but I haven't heard one.
I haven't heard of a single one, but I am allowing for the I am allowing for the failure of the federal government to be possible. And I'm not taking it, with a grain of salt on that one. I'm saying the government makes errors, and it does it all the time. And sometimes when it does it to the tune of millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of damage. And so I think better safe than sorry. Let's keep our people identified. These people you go to a factory and you pick up 325 illegal immigrants. The supervisor is probably a citizen, right? The people who have worked at the factory for longer than 5 years or whatever,
I would submit also we need to not be predicating our arguments on the notion that people who ingressed our territory in contravention of our laws are entitled to the same due process that a citizen or a lawful immigrant would be, because that is a complete fiction and it's just not true.
I set that entirely aside at the beginning of my tirade. Whether or not you agree that they need due process is a totally different conversation. In the event that an American citizen is picked up in one of these raids, that individual deserves the full weight of due process. The problem is, if you don't have identifying markings on individuals in a raid, and somebody steps over the line and, I don't know, maybe whoops up on some people or something. I don't know. I'm just sort of assuming something's going to happen eventually if it keeps going at this tilt. Errors happen. People are fallible.
Obviously, these men need the ability to perform their duties in the manner prescribed by law within the parameters of the applicable statutes. And yeah, I would really like it if we were still a country where like we used to be, We didn't used to be Mexico or freaking Costa Rica or Guatemala, where cops have to have their faces covered all the time because they fear reprisals from the criminal gangs that they are at war with. But that just happens to be where we are now. And obviously, I can see credible arguments on both sides of these. And as much as I hate to play the both sides game, I can see credible arguments on both sides for we shouldn't wear masks. And also, I have to wear a mask because these assholes are trying to dox me and follow me home and cause harm to my wife and kids. I mean,
And I get that. And I get that. And I will accept a mask in one, only one exception. I have no problem with it if you'll put your badge number right across your chest in a format large enough to recognize. You know, where it says like CIA or FBI or, you know, sheriff or deputy or police or whatever, like the big, huge letters right up under it.
Or even like military personnel. They have a name tape right on their right front chest that says their last name. I have no problem with that being done. Put that in a badge number.
Yeah, make it. All I'm saying is I want it big enough that a camera can pick it up, and due to the types of raids that are going on, the camera question kind of goes out of the window immediately because most of these raids are taking place on private property of various types. And so the right to film is kind of abbreviated by the company or the owner or whatever their will is. And usually it's a business, and businesses typically either limit the First Amendment as far as filming, or, you know, they have that choice to do that. And so if there's anything in documentation that says you can't film there, well, that's out like that. I don't think that can be used as evidence because it's sort of fruit of the poison tree, so to speak.
And a lot of this gets back to the notion which you've been hearing me say for a long time, that voluntary self-deportation is wildly preferable to having to go and round people up in a variety of ways. And I think the Trump administration has been very successful at that, because just this week, Kristi Noem announced that 1.6 million illegals have self-deported just since January. And I think that's a wonderful number. That makes me very, very happy, because every one of them that doesn't have to be forcibly rounded up is less danger and less possibility for abuse and over exuberance, and because there always is the possibility of law enforcement personnel being over exuberant in the performance of their duties. That's a real thing that happens. You can be on their side and support their mission and still be cognizant of the fact that possibility always does exist.
Yes, and as far as like having to worry about cartels and whatnot, get a different job. I don't know what to tell you. If you're too far down the rabbit hole to stick your head back out and go find other employment, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. If you want to wear masks when you're at work, make sure you're identifiable. Stick your badge number on your chest some fucking where we can film it, and we'll be good.
Agree. I'm with you on that. There should be some means of identification, and I understand, and I am sympathetic to the fact that even a name and a badge number still exposes you to the potential of being doxxed. But like you say, do you want to be in this profession or not? You are in a dangerous profession. You are doing important work, and we admire you for doing it. But still, we have to live up to our standards as Americans, the way that we traditionally do these things, because we don't want to be fucking Central America.
Right. And I'll go down one more little rabbit hole here with it, and then we can move on to the movie. Undercover operations, aka the DEA, the full extent of the Department of Drug Enforcement, like that whole thing, right? The whole idea behind the concept of undercover work in that style, I don't think should operate inside the U.S. because it goes against everything the police are supposed to stand for. It is basically using criminal tactics against the criminals themselves. And while I understand that's a very effective method, that's the reason we have confidential informants, right? That's the reason we have CIs, is to do those things that are not legal for us to do. right? And instead, the federal government bypasses 2/3 of the Constitution by saying, "Oh, it's a secret sting operation," and I do not agree with that either.
You know, you
Did we
just
just
said
get
the word
raided?
undercover, and I gotta hankering to go down another rabbit hole
Yeah.
and ask you your thoughts on this week's J6 bombshell that the FBI finally admitted they had 275 plainclothes operatives in the crowd on January 6th, 2021.
And that doesn't. Did Chris Lestrange? Did you just raid me? I appreciate, brother. That's absolutely amazing. I just picked up like 40 people.
Nice, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
It's magnificent. Welcome in, everybody. Like, comment, and
Indeed,
subscribe.
glad to have you.
Click all the buttons. Comment in the freaking chat. Do all the things, man. You know, send me some money. Shit, we're doing stuff. Anyway, I don't like none of it. I think all of that should be completely shut down. The whole concept behind undercover operations on domestic soil, I think, is completely against every aspect and amendment in the Constitution. I don't think there's any room for that type of activity, right?
And I think also it is kind of illustrative of the sort of semantic games and wordplay that deep state officials sometimes get into, because when Chris Wray, the FBI director, was testifying before Congress about those events, and he was asked how many undercover operatives the FBI had among the crowd that day, he said, "Oh, maybe a couple dozen." And the distinction that he's making, and the way that he is able to argue that that wasn't a lie, is that, well, there is a difference between undercover and plainclothes. Plainclothes doesn't mean undercover. They don't mean the same thing. So I wasn't necessarily lying. But if he had said that 275 of those people were actually FBI personnel who were pretending not to be FBI personnel, that changes the entire scenario of that hearing. That changes the entire scenario of the whole story for the last several years. And that is a gigantic bombshell, because a couple dozen is way the hell different from 275. And now also, I want to know how many of those 275 were actually agent provocateurs who were actually promoting and facilitating the vandalism and the criminal mischief, because that is the next question that we have to get answered.
It is, and there's a third question or an additional question that I would like to have answered, and we'll never get an answer to this one, but it rubs the furry wrinkles on my brain. If you had 275, 235,
275.
270, if you had 275 legitimate government operators in the crowd that day, how many useful idiots and confidential informants were also in that crowd?
Exactly. And that could be you might wind up ultimately with, I mean, how many people were there in total? No more than a couple thousand. 275 out of a couple thousand is what, 15%? And if you have additional useful idiots on top of that number, you might have a quarter to a third of that entire crowd who were there at the behest of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And are we still going to pretend that this was just some sort of organic insurrection? Because that narrative is going to break down completely.
That narrative broke down completely as an insurrection when not a single American brought a firearm.
There is that. Yeah, as attempts to overthrow the government goes, it was a pretty feeble one.
I mean, there was a lot of selfies and pictures taken, and a whole bunch of cops made statements on the day, but then changed their statements immediately after, as if we don't believe our lying eyes. But beyond all of that, let's get to the movie.
Go for it. So
I'm sitting around over here, chilling like a villain, plotting world destruction and takeover and everything,
as you do.
My dog, as you do with my dog, yeah. And I get a text from you. You send me a text like, "Hey, check out The Last Rifleman." And I was like, "Okay, I'll check it out." Ironically, I had just sat down and was just kind of scrolling through my phone, hadn't turned on the TV, or had just turned on the TV, but hadn't checked anything. And I was like, "Fine, Last Rifleman." And I watched it immediately.
And I'm glad I caught you at a good moment, because I have no problem admitting that at the moment I texted you that, I had tears streaming down both cheeks, because that was how much the movie affected me. And I couldn't even tell you the last time I saw a current day movie that made me feel real emotions. What an unexpectedly wonderful thing that was.
I was very pleasantly surprised with it, and might have had to take my one man tear to the shower, But in general, just to give sort of an overview, I can't remember which division it was. It's the 80,
second Ulster Rifles.
Second Ulster Rifles Corps. What was it, like 2,700 people in the Corps entirely, like 129 in his particular little.
Yes, and I believe I did look it up afterward, and I don't recall exactly, but I believe so. You've got from west to east, you've got the two American beaches, Omaha and Utah. Then you've got the two British beaches, Gold and Sword, and then you've got the Canadian beach, Juno. And I believe the second Ulster Rifles would have been on Sword Beach, if I'm not mistaken.
They would have been flanked on the right side by additional British and the left side by the Canadians.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Okay. So the story opens with this old guy in an old folks home talking to a bunch of other old folks, and him and his wife are in the same old folks home, same hospice care. That's what this is. Let's not be silly about it. These people are waiting to die. It's not made that plain, but it is obvious. And then his wife dies. And it's a very sad, poignant thing. And you can see it really, really affects him. But you can also see that it's the only reason he was still in that home and accepted all of the prescriptions on his movement was because of her. And he was
taking care of his wife to her dying day, even though she was riddled with dementia and sometimes mistook him for another man, which has to be agonizing.
For a specific other man. Did you notice that part?
Yes.
She called him Charlie.
His best friend, whom she would have married if he had survived the war. And he didn't survive the war because he, Artie Crawford, was not the hero that day. He was cowering in fear behind a tree, and his friend Charlie had to turn around and come back for him, and then got blown to bits. And then Artie Crawford winds up being the man who survives the war and gets to live a good long life with a rack of medals on his chest and be treated like the hero when all he did, and get the girl when all he really did was be a coward. And I really like the exploration of every different facet of war guilt like that.
Well, I get that, and I totally get what you're saying, and you are not wrong on anything that you said, but keep in mind, this movie only depicts his actions in a single battle. It doesn't give you anything after that, and that war went on for what? For the British, it was like 6 years?
It was 6 years, indeed. 39 to 45.
So you're talking about from the storming of the beaches until the end of the war, that's 4 years, right? Technically.
Oh, no. D-Day is 6 June of 44, and the war ends in May of 45. So it's 11 months between the one and the other.
Months. Okay. All right. My bad. So in the 11 months, it only shows the initial breakout, north of Carrington, somewhere over there.
Yep.
I don't know exactly where. And this initial breakout involves the death of his friend. We don't hear anything else about what happened, but he's got a whole rack of salad on his chest.
And
right?
You raised an excellent point, and I agree with your analysis, because he doesn't get that whole rack of medals just from hiding behind a tree.
That's right. I think the implication that's not written into the script or the movie, and what makes it such a deep watch, is the fact that he does have that rack of medals on his chest, and he is treated as a hero. He left that spot having witnessed his best friend's death, having written his dying letter home, having sent it to his fiance back home, and then went through the war trying to make it up to be a good man.
Yes. And even in spite of whatever legitimate heroics he engaged in and was decorated for after that incident, the only incident that sticks in his mind is when his best friend got blown to bits because he was cowering in fear.
Because he was a coward. And I think that's the subtext between the person that he is. Because I had a thought when he was trying to cross the channel to get into France. I was like, shit, you couldn't stop him 60 years ago. What the hell you think you're going to stop him today? He's got even less to lose today, bro. Like, he's going. You might as well just wave that kid through.
And I didn't even know Pierce Brosnan is an Irishman. Did you know that?
I was wondering about that. I
spent the whole movie thinking, wow, Pierce Brosnan is doing a great job with this Ulster accent for being an Englishman playing Irish. Then afterward, I pull up his Wikipedia page, and it turns out he's been Irish all along and playing English his whole career. So mind blown.
I mean, that actually gives him a better claim for James Bond than he had before in my mind.
Yeah, when a guy plays James Bond, I mean, I guess with the obvious exception of Sean Connery, you just kind of assume he's English. And I never knew, but he's been an Irishman all along.
Dude, Sean Connery is a very good, very, very good example of a well-cast Bond. And the fact that was he Scottish?
Yes.
The fact that he's Scottish doesn't matter in the leastest. Not even a little.
And he never tried to play English when he was playing Bond. He was Scottish all the way.
But yeah, I just kind of think everybody assumed he was English because he played Bond. I mean, that seems.
Yeah, I did. I mean, all the way back to when he was Remington Steele, I assumed he was English, and I just never even bothered looking it up. So that kind of blew my mind.
So the movie plays out. He makes it to the reunion. There's this huge freaking party going on over there, and he has one of the best scenes in the movie. Is it James? Who is James Olmos?
John Amos.
John Amos.
Who everyone in the audience will remember as the dad from Good Times. He was also in Roots.
So
and he shows up for a very pivotal scene during the third act, which is
right.
Yeah.
Much like our gentleman from Ulster, he is the last surviving member of a totally different rifle corps, not the Buffalo Soldiers, but the other black infantry of World War II that nobody ever talks about. And
yeah, and they were the ones responsible for raising the barrage balloons over the beach.
Yep, and they also happen to have one other distinguishing feature. They were the very first unit to put a black man's feet on the soil. And he tells this really quick story. It's 10 seconds, 15 seconds or something. He just stands up, he's fixing to leave, and he looks at the man, and without knowing anything about the Ulster Rifleman's story, he tells him an almost identical story. So, I got all these medals on my chest, not because I took that beach. And they named me the first black man to set foot in Europe.
Yeah.
But that's not true. My little brother came off.
And my brother wound up getting killed, and he was the real hero, and compared to him, I didn't really do shit, which is exactly the same as Artie's story, as you mentioned.
It's so poignant. The way he says it like a confession.
Yeah.
And Artie looks at him and nods, and there's a shot of Jack placed on the table for him that he hasn't touched. And the man walks away, and he sits there for a second and goes, and takes the shot. And then passes out, ends up in the hospital, and has to make another jailbreak to make it to the place he's trying to get to, which turns out not to be this big party, not to be the parade at all, but a gentleman's grave.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about the movie. It makes us assume the whole way along that he just wants to make it to the anniversary celebration. But right at the end, it disabuses us of that belief, and we realize, no, he just wanted to go to Charlie's grave and leave this letter at his headstone.
There is one additional thing there, however, and it deeply moved me when it happened. When he goes to the hotel that used to have a bar, and it's a office building or something now, or an updated hotel. It's no longer the classy, French pub that it once was or whatever. And he goes there and he talks to the guy. He's like, hey, have anybody like me come by, medals and stuff? And they're like, no, sir, we don't serve drinks here anymore. He's like, but nobody showed up. And he's like, no, sir. Well, that's impossible. Okay, I'll be back.
Always here.
Yeah, well, he leaves.
They always show up. Yep.
And he comes back later, like, I don't know, 4 hours later or whatever. And he's like, has anybody showed up? And they're like, no. Or maybe it was somebody else who came by because that's where they always went. And it was like, oh, there's this one old gentleman who come through. And that's how he finds him in the hospital, if I'm not mistaken. right?
Yeah.
Or did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he finds him in the hospital, finds out this is when you find out that he is the sole surviving member of the entire division. Every man who stormed that beach that day is dead except him.
And hence the title of the movie. And
The title
there were a few different places in the narrative where I thought the movie very easily could have taken a left turn into maudlin sentimentality and avoided doing that. And I'll tell you the one spot where I was most worried about that. It is when Artie is trying to get from, I guess he's at Omaha Beach and he's trying to get to Sword Beach, which is the place where he's actually going. And the French lady who has picked him up and helped him on his way only has one bus that she can put him on, and it is a German bus full of German veterans. And this man has not come face to face with one single German since June of 1944. But he really wants to get to where he's going, and he grudgingly climbs aboard the German bus and sits and has a very awkward conversation with a man named Friedrich Müller, who is a veteran of the SS who was conscripted to go be among the Normandy defenders. And I was so afraid at this point that the movie was going to have them become fast friends and buddies and complete the journey together. And it resists the temptation to do that. And I'm so glad it did, because they don't become fast friends. They have a conversation that never winds up not being awkward, but they do recognize each other's humanity. They don't even wind up shaking hands. And the ultimate denouement of the sequence is that Friedrich Müller, as Artie is getting off the bus, he simply says, maybe in a different time and place, we could have drunk a schnapps together. And Artie says, aye, maybe. And that's it. And it was just a wonderful scene. And I think it's the crux of the entire movie. I'm actually getting emotional talking about it.
I love that scene. It's a really good one. And the fact that it's followed up with basically him hooking up with a young Scottish kid who's just on his way somewhere because the bus breaks down.
Yeah, and they bond over the music of Ennio Morricone. And right. I thought that was well done too.
I love that whole sequence. I don't know if he was Irish or what, Scottish. I couldn't tell, but I love
probably Irish, because he has to start out in Ulster, and then obviously he has to go through the Republic of Ireland, where he encounters some anti-British sentiment, and he kind of has to sheepishly admit that, yeah, I actually fought for the British. Sorry. And right. Then I am assuming that he leaves from the southernmost point in the Republic of Ireland, which I believe is Cobb, which is a much longer journey than it is from England, from Dover or Land's End or wherever. It's actually an overnight journey at that point. It's so long.
Right. But, so he needs a room.
And that's one of the fascinating things about the first act is that we kind of get a little dose of internal Irish politics about the difference between Ulstermen and Irishmen.
Yeah, he reaches the shore. He runs into the problem of his freaking passport being like 8 years out of date, and there's no way he's going to be able to get anywhere near any of this. And he runs across a French lady, and this French lady is like, "Look, we can get you in, right? Come on, we'll figure it out." She loads him up in her caravan, and they sneak him into France. And there's through a bunch of BS. On the boat, they basically bug out, and he asks her, he's like, "Tell me something. Why are you helping me out?" And she points at the medals on his chest and says, "My grandmother was in the resistance." Yeah, and maybe it's just in the blood, but basically it's the right thing to do. And I think anyone put in that position would acknowledge that it's the right thing to do, but not everyone would break Interpol laws to accomplish the right thing. No. And it sort of says something about the quality of person that he tends to attract. The young Scottish fellow, Irish fellow, whatever, who helped him down the road, that he has a little diabetic thing, and they give him some freaking sugar, and they have a little bonding.
They get picked up by a lady truck driver, and he that takes a little getting used to for him.
And she's completely cool with it. Has
Oh, I
no
know.
failings as far as all of that. It's the
And
whole
she
scene
gives the two of them a lecture about Irish military history, which I loved. I thought that was great.
I
Yep.
mean, right?
Yep.
You know, the whole thing. It's not a barrel of laughs. Don't misunderstand me. But it is poignant. It is well written. It is amazingly well performed. The dialogue never takes a trip by itself. It always brings you along with it. And it's never quite what you expect. It feels very organic. Like these are actual people saying actual things that actual people would actually say, with a couple of exceptions. Like when they do the switcheroo on the ferry, and homeboy rides out, that scene where he's riding past the guard gate and they wave him through and stop her, and he gets that big shitty grin on his face. There's a lot of
you have to do that whole like Breaking Bad style handoff in the rail yard area.
Right. But there's a lot of very subtle movie making that takes place in the scenes of this movie without you ever being told, without it does the show, don't tell. It does it. It does it well.
Yes. And I was really astounded after I had watched it and loved it, and you had watched it and loved it, and I went and looked on Rotten Tomatoes and found that it only had a 71% from the top critics, for whatever that label is worth. And I said, okay, I got to go and read what these negative reviews have to say. And I suspected before I went and read them, correctly as it turns out, that there is a common perception among film critics of a certain age, let's just call them millennials, that they predispose themselves to give negative reviews to any movie that they see as glorifying the Second World War, because they just view that as terribly unfashionable. And I found that a lot of that came through in my reading of the negative review. One of the common complaints was, and I shit you not, and you're just going to scoff at this, and you're going to scoff at it correctly. They kept saying, well, it has such a traditional formulaic road trip structure. And I'm thinking, it's a movie about a fucking road trip. What kind of structure do you want it to have?
Yeah, no, that's a perfectly valid complaint, if you wish.
And the other complaint was about the two subplots. We of course have the one subplot with Ian McElhinney, I believe is his name, Sir Barristan Selmy from Game of Thrones, who everybody will know him from that role. They didn't like that subplot, and they also didn't like the subplot with the journalist who winds up chasing after him. But neither of those subplots really bothered me in the slightest. I mean, I guess they were each a bit corny in their own way, but I don't think it detracted from the narrative at all.
I really like the reporter that shows up, and the fact that he's balls deep in as soon as he shows up. The second he meets that guy, he's like, hey, I really want you to do this thing. I'm here to follow you to the end of the story. I want to get, and he just kind of shrugs at it. It's like, okay, fine. And they have themselves.
Even though he's just trying to get a juicy narrative to write in his newspaper, he is the guy who gets Artie to his ultimate destination. And so you have a problem with that subplot when it ties into the main plot and winds up being critical to the plot in the end.
Well, the real plot, and this is the thing, there's so many layers of plot going on that it's hard to parse it all out the first time through. In fact, I told you I'm going to have to process that before I'm willing to discuss it, for reasons like the fact that he feels completely responsible for, every horrible thing that ever happened. And the only part of the war that he really remembers is the killing of his friend. Everything else that happened could have been absolutely heroic, and you'd never know. He'd never mention it.
And I felt like in a few of these unfavorable reviews that I was reading, that the critics were trying so hard to find something not to like that they didn't take the time to appreciate all the subtext that is actually present in the narrative, and that's their loss. And naturally, it won't surprise you to hear that these unfavorable reviews were all in the big Hollywood trades, your Hollywood Reporter and your Variety and all that kind of stuff. And what a bunch of trash. And
you can expect it, though. I mean, it was done in what is it, 2023, I think? 2024?
Yeah. Yep. 23. I thought it was 23. Yeah.
I'm just saying the the trailer says 24, so it's probably filmed in 23. And as you can see, this is a 62-year-old Pierce Brosnan playing a 92.
He's 72 playing 92.
And I mean, the comparison I made was the 45-year-old who plays a high school senior, you know. But this is a very different exchange. And while he does seem pretty spry for a 92-year-old man, he does a phenomenal job of being the duck out of water, completely out of sync with the times, not understanding anything, but still just getting along to get along, the whole nine. But I want to go back directly to the to the reporter, because the story he actually gets is probably a story he actually won't write until later, right? The fact that he was a coward, that he watched his friend die, that not only that, he wrote his friend's death letter to his friend's fiance and then went back to England and married her, lived a whole life with her, only to be mistaken as his best friend when she got old and demented.
After 68 years, your wife is mistaking you for another man. And how awful must that feel?
And one of the final scenes in the movie, and I think it's one of the more poignant ones. I mean, this absolutely broke me. I had to go take a shower and shed my one-man tear a year. He writes Margaret's death letter to Charlie.
Yep.
And goes and sets it on his grave. And that's why he's there. That's the whole purpose.
That's the
Everything else was just what he had to deal with to get to this point. And you see the effect that it has on the reporter when he's like over here, he's popping to pictures and he sees the letter that he read in the hospital that hadn't been signed, sees him set it on the grave, and he's like, oh wow, he did it both ways. He deceived everyone, right?
Yeah, and he figures it out at the exact same moment the viewer does. So ultimately he functions as a proxy for the viewer, which is a brilliant thing for the movie to do, and just excellently executed, I thought.
It's an unbelievable film. And The Last Rifleman is the name of the film. One of those Metro Goldwyn? No, Samuel Goldwyn films. So
a movie that didn't even get a theatrical release. And if we were living, like I told you yesterday, if we were living in the late 70s or the early 80s, when a movie like this could get studio backing and a wide release, it would have been one of the biggest box office hits of the year. I thought back to the example after we talked yesterday about On Golden Pond, which I think was from 1981. And it's just a movie about a couple of old people sitting on their porch waiting to die. But it's Henry Fonda and Kate Hepburn. It's a couple of actors that people really like, each doing their last great performance. And I think it was the number one or two box office hit of 1981. A movie like that couldn't even get a theatrical release today because it's not $300 million disposable superhero dog shit that goes in one ear and out the other, and you don't remember anything about it after you got done watching it. And how far cinema has fallen.
How far cinema has fallen. Absolutely. Okay. So some terrible things have happened in the world this past week. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we've had 2 mass shootings that aren't related to Chicago. I didn't get a whole lot of details on the first one. It might have been the very end of last week, to be honest. But then, what was it, yesterday or earlier today? There was the Michigan church shooting. Latter-day Saints.
Yeah, we had the ICE shooting, which I believe was on Monday, and then this morning we had the Mormon church firebombing / gun attack.
And I've got virtually no information on that one. 8 dead, probably 10 before it's all said and done, and a handful of people missing after the firebombing. And I think it was 12 people missing. And I suspect you'll find 3 or 4 more than they're predicting, because
they said at the outset that they expect many people to be found deceased because there were a large number of people trapped inside who had no means of egress. So that's what happens in fires.
Right. So There's a lot of discussion currently. The guy was driving a truck with a veteran tag and two American flags on the back. And a lot of people are pointing at that and saying, hey, look at this. It's obviously one of those right wing nut jobs we've been looking for. And I just want to make it perfectly clear, in the history of right wing nut jobs, I have no memory of one ever attacking a church.
And isn't it fascinating how quickly the news media are willing to jump to conclusions about an attacker's motivation when it comports with the narrative that they want to tell, when it doesn't comport with the narrative they want to tell, even when the person has written Antifa slogans all over their shell casings, they still get up there and say, oh, there's no way of knowing what the political motivations might have been. It's a total mystery. And these people are such goddamn charlatans. It actually makes me physically sick sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I have a prediction, and no one's gonna like it. And I can't give you a direct theory on preparations and all of that, but I suspect that this is going to either be emotionally motivated or religiously motivated. I'm not sure this is political at all. I suspect that somebody was cheating on somebody and somebody found out about it, and then there was a firebombing at a church. I don't know who.
And I tend to agree.
I don't know.
Like I was telling you backstage. I mean, as I told you earlier, this church just happens to be the church where my grandmother-in-law had her funeral. And having married into an LDS family over 30 years ago, in my own experience, when people have animosity toward that church and the people in it, it is usually because they were raised in that church and something happened in their life that made them go off the rails and blame the church and the people in it for whatever their life problems happen to be. And that would lead me to make that my first guess, more so than anything political.
Yes. And I mean, this to me, it feels more personal. This isn't an assassination. This isn't anything that, unless you're looking at it through political lenses, I don't see anything political on the surface. Just the fact that he was a veteran, perhaps, and had two American flags on the back of his truck doesn't mean he can't get pissed off about the guy who's been dorking his wife and lose his shit. It happens. People do that.
Yeah, and it might even be as simple as that. We have no way of knowing.
No way of knowing yet. But next week, after this week's investigation and the whole nine happens, this is one of those I want to look at because it doesn't seem to fit any category. It's not a militant right-wing weirdo who's been posting a bunch online, to my knowledge. And I did look right before we started. I couldn't find anything from an online presence short of a Facebook of basically what you would expect from a 47-year-old gentleman with, family and a life, boats and ducks and dogs and guns and stuff. So
and that's what sets it apart from other attacks of a similar ilk, because normally there is a long, extensive social media digital paper trail with attackers like this, and that's another thing that leads me to believe it's more likely to be based on some sort of personal antipathy or vendetta.
Now, whether it's against the church or an individual in the church, or he's just his cheese slid off his cracker and he chose that location, I mean, remains to be seen.
And it might be that it could even be wartime PTSD that took 20 odd years to manifest. You never know. Sometimes
it is possible. I mean, it may be that we never find out what the real reason is, and
that's also a possibility. But we also know that all the worst people in the world will use it to fill in whatever the blanks of their particular political narrative they want to advance. They will do that.
I want to caution people from looking at this through the political lens first. While everything is downstream from politics, politics is downstream from real life.
Yes.
And just because you want to see evidence doesn't mean that that's evidence of what you want to see. So,
and sometimes sometimes things don't fit neatly into the red team versus blue team game, and we should resist that temptation, just as you quite rightly say we should.
I have a hobby. I look at unsolved cases from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, typically cases that have been more or less closed, things that I could never have possibly been involved in, you know, because when I look at details in a case, a lot of times I don't see the details as they're written. I see the physical action take place in my mind, and how could these details possibly have been made to be that way, right? When I look at fresh things, and you get as much detail as you can get in the modern era with cell phones being absolutely everywhere, and you can see the guy and you can see where he's from, and you can see his social media history, what truck he drives, what types of guns he plays with, what types of hunting he does, and all of that stuff. The same effect takes place where in my mind a little movie plays out that could put all of these things in the right place, where they landed, where they ended. It's not unlike archaeology. And when I look at this scenario, I don't feel like this is a weirdo left-wing radical making a political statement. I feel like this is a very personal action that was taken against probably a couple of individuals that were in that building, and the rest.
And I've already seen, even at this early hour, as I'm sure you have too, when you looked, people on YouTube, including channels that I normally respect quite a lot, trying to insist that this must be some kind of false flag operation, because it couldn't be a military veteran with two American flags on his pickup truck. It has to be some kind of leftist freaking Manchurian candidate type thing. And no, it doesn't. Just calm down and let the facts develop. I mean, stop making fools of yourselves. Really, you don't have to do this.
But they do.
But they do.
They get more views, more money, more hype, more views whenever they hype it up as a political thing, because everybody's doing that now.
Yeah, you run with the most sensationalistic possible interpretation of events that fits with your preferred version of events and the narrative that you seek to advance. And it is one way in which things like YouTube, while they have been really great for dismantling the stranglehold of the mainstream fake news media, there is also a definite downside to it, and that is what the downside looks like, in my judgment.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It can be carried too far in either direction, and that is exactly why. Well, that's not exactly the reason why I say to take off your political glasses for this one, is because something in my autism from what I saw tells me that's not political. They're going to find an individual who took his wife, who took his home, who took his dog, who stole a preferred shotgun, who did something.
Or who excommunicated him from the church. It could be any number of things. People get personal vendettas over all kinds of shit.
Right. And so I worry about the backlash that comes from this type of stuff on the Second Amendment, because never let a good never let a
crisis go to waste.
Never let a good crisis go to waste. Right. And I'm afraid that's exactly what we're watching when neither side can be trusted with firearms. The government has no choice but to limit everyone. Right.
Indeed.
And I think that's the narrative that the general news media ghouls are going to corner on this. And I don't see another one that would fit, and it would fit quite nicely into their manifesto, if you will.
And we already know they are already doing the 100-yard dash, trying to portray this thing as politically motivated right-wing terrorism, while at the very same time they're still looking at Monday's Antifa sniper attack on the ICE facility, on the transport van, and saying, even though the guy wrote anti-ICE slogans all over his shell casings and had a long digital track record of left-wing activism, they're still saying, oh, we've got no idea what his motivations were. It could have been anything. It's a real mystery.
And I've
And-
got one more feature of this past week that I want to bring up, and then we'll go for a palate cleanser of some stupid people doing stupid stuff. Ice Cube. We know and love Ice
I
Cube.
saw that one.
No, this ain't funny. I'm not laughing at it. I'm laughing at
No.
the circumstance. The circumstance is funny. So Ice Cube, the lovely gentleman that he is with all of his funny faces, is traveling through California in his tour bus, which is, of course, a large white unmarked RV style bus. That Antifa or someone else decided, obviously,
I'm not
look
laughing.
ice facility. And so they decided to firebomb the damn thing and successfully burned it out. Now, this is not a good thing. Don't misunderstand me. I just find it funny that one of the most famous rappers and a decent freaking movie star and one of the more famous people in the world got firebombed by Antifa because they didn't write their name on the side of the bus.
You know what it makes me want to do, if I'm being honest? It makes me want to intercut some clips from the news story about the firebombing of the inadvertent firebombing of Ice Cube's tour bus with some of the scenes of Ice Cube making funny faces at the camera from the War of the Worlds movie.
I'm just saying, bro, like that would be fantastic. You reckon we could slap some AI on that? I mean, somebody out there that does AI, dear
I
God.
feel like I could slap together something really funny.
Something. Come on, man. It writes itself. But that
It does. It's one of those things that writes itself. You're not wrong.
I hope and pray that everyone involved in that vehicle and the whole event are safe, that no one was harmed. I'm not laughing at the horrible things that have happened. I'm merely laughing at the irony of the circumstance. I
wish I could be a fly on the wall in the room that the firebombers were in when they found out they had firebombed Ice Cube's tour bus and not an ice detention transport.
Call it melting Ice Cube or the ice meltdown.
I'm like, holy shit, that was Ice Cube? What did we just do?
Okashuko Papa Shango says only in Clown World. And then, of course, Gabriel's Trap House Gaines tell us says one of Ice Cube's best songs is called "Look Who's Burning."
It seems far too often these days that there's not nearly enough separation between the real world and clown world.
Oh God, there's just not, and I got nothing for it, right? All right, so as always, palate cleanser when we need one, and I feel like the heinous shit that's gone on this past week deserves a little bit of a palate cleanser. So we have Acorn.
Agreed. Over
here with his sultry tones, and he's going to try to walk us through some of it. And what this says is, hey friend, listen, it's a I don't know, Iraqi soldier, maybe, it's an American soldier somewhere deployed somewhere in the world. Hey friend, listen, I know the world is scary right now, but it's only going to get worse, right? Oh no.
It's Sunday. I'm Acorn. Welcome back to Laugh While the
Hi,
World
Acorn.
Burns, where we stream the chaos like it's Saturday morning cartoons.
Right?
So let's get started. Taco Bell is re-evaluating AI drive-through technology after someone ordered 18,000 cups of water. Well, if you're going to put a system like that in place, then you should also realize that people's going to test it in every way possible, just to see what happens.
What do you reckon about that? Was that
It's
an
true.
error?
He raises a fair point that if you put a robot in charge of things, people are going to test the parameters of what the robot is capable of, just as they do with the AI chatbots. What crazy ass thing can I make the AI chatbot say? And it's not any different at a freaking fast food drive-through.
I break every game that I play somehow.
There you go.
It's not that I go in there with the intention to play the game. I have every intention of breaking this game, and I break it. I eventually break it.
Can I go over here? Can I do this thing? What if I try to jump off this thing?
Yeah, and modern games have become much more difficult to break because they involve a whole bunch of different people, and so they break in different ways than the old games used to. You'd break and go into like some alternate dimension or whatever where everything
Yeah,
is
my son recently bought WWE 2K25 or whatever it's called, and he brought it over to my house and invited me to play it with him. And so I just wanted to pick the most esoteric match type, the most esoteric venue, the most bizarre matchup of wrestlers I could possibly select, and just see what crazy shit I could get them to do. And I don't want to go ahead and just have a wrestling match. I mean, I want to see how I can break the thing, exactly as you mentioned.
Exactly. And if you're not playing a game with the intent of overclocking it to the point where you melt down your machine, you're not playing the game right. As an
Agreed.
example, first-person shooters are designed to be first-person shooters for a reason. The fact that I refuse to play a first-person shooter, if there's a car, an airplane, a helicopter, or anything else in it, I will go straight to that vehicle, take it, drive it to the next most important vehicle, and drive it to the next one. And if you do that enough on some games, not only can you wipe the vehicles off of the map, but if you can overclock it to the point where it kicks you out, that's a victory, in my opinion. Don't ask me why.
God, it was even more fun doing that with games from like 20 years ago. Yeah.
Dude,
there was this one game I used to play with my kids. I can't even remember what the name of it was, but it was one of those games that was like a bargain basement ripoff of Grand Theft Auto. And God, we used to have so much fun breaking that thing's brain in all the different ways that we could think of to break its brain. And God, those were good times.
Yeah, I've broken Minecraft. Like there's things I can do in Minecraft that'll like push you out of the map in a way that makes you fall through nothing forever.
Driver, that was the name of it.
Driver. Oh my God.
Yeah. The name is Driver, but the second E is a 3. That was the game.
Driver was voted the most difficult game of like the following 3 years of its release, because
was it
the intro bit where you do the tutorial on how to do spins and like parallel park on a skid, and that you've got this it should take you about 22 seconds to pull it off, right? Apparently a significant portion of the population couldn't do it. They would buy the game, play it for a weekend, and then take it back and return it because they couldn't get through the tutorial.
My God, me and the kids just had endless hours of frivolity trying to do bizarre shit with that game. It was fun. And I'm not even into video games, and God, it was fun.
Yeah. The one, I don't remember which Driver it was. I think it might have been Driver 3 or Driver 2, but
I feel like this was Driver 3 that we played.
Yeah, I think it was Driver 3. The final mission in it is you had choice of 2 cars. The guy jumps in like a cab or something and drives off high speed going up this freaking mountain trail around the rim of some great crater or some crap. You're inches away from death through the whole thing. And you have the choice between a shitty Mazda and a Mercedes-Benz with a flat tire. And so I played that game so much that I beat it with the shitty Mazda you're supposed to beat it with, because you're supposed to just flat out drive the guy is what it comes down to. And you can't do it. The game is set up so that you can't actually do it till you get to the very end of the match. There's literally a transition that takes place. And before the transition, there is nothing on God's. If you have a jet airplane and chase that car down, it will stay 3 car lengths in front of you. So it does not matter what you do until you hit the weird camera switch where it goes from right behind you driving to kind of an overhead view. Right after that, suddenly you're back on an even kill and you can outdrive them.
And I think also, though I am admittedly, again, not a gaming aficionado, I think with driving games in particular, a certain portion of the population just wants to use them to see which pedestrians you're allowed to kill and how many different ways you're allowed to kill them.
You're not wrong. I prefer, like, one of the things I used to do is, and this wasn't to break the game. This is, like I said, because I prefer driving in first person shooters, because typically the driving isn't hammered out. You could find all kinds of glitches. What I would do is join a group and just disappear from the group, run off and they'd be like, "Where'd the new guy go?" And then they'd march off and go do whatever the game's supposed to do. And then eventually I'd show up and be like, "Hey, did anybody call a Uber Squatch?" Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be your Uber this afternoon. Can you please place a location you would like to visit on the map? Place your seats in the upright tables and put your guns out of the window so that we can defend ourselves through this wonderful city of Beirut. If you look to your left, you'll.
I'll be your friendly neighborhood Uber Squatch this evening.
That's exactly right. I mean, I dropped the bajillion lines that on that, and I mean, we lose almost immediately because they start laughing, and you know.
Good
another
times.
thing I like to do, and there's nothing wrong with this. This is okay. I like to play these games when I drink because it's the only way to safely drink and drive, or drink and fly, get hammered and fly upside down a tunnel. You know.
Yep.
What's up, Vanta? Welcome in, bud. So, I guess ultimately the question comes down of, is the world a simulation, and how do we break this game?
There's a non-zero chance that it is, and you can.
Right? And so I figure we push the envelope, stay hard in the paint, never touch the brakes, and burn this motherfucker down. How do you feel about that?
I'll sign that memo.
Okay. So that's going to go up to Trump, and we'll find out all about it in a couple of weeks. You know he'll tweet about it, right?
If I could do a decent Trump impression, I would go completely off on that for 5 minutes.
Oh God, I fucking hate that I can't do Trump at all.
I know, I hate that so much. I can't get that nasal thing going that he's got. I just freaking can't do it.
I don't know. It's sort of the weak voice that he has that I can't do. You know,
there's just something about the way he projects that is just, and I can do a lot of really good impressions. I can't do him, not at all.
Are they fixing to let that door shut?
Hey, Gavin Newsom's California.
Right? They got locked in. They let the door shut. What freaking amateurs. Bro. Those guys deserve to go to jail.
Come on, they're just stealing bread to feed their families.
Damn. Okay. I gotta give them credit. I know this isn't exactly Grand Theft Auto, but that was a pretty good raid. I mean, we just watched the whole thing.
I guess it was smart that at least one of them brought a pistol.
Half of them were armed. They were loaded, dude. They were loaded for bear. Oh wow.
Yeah, they brought the whole caravan, didn't they?
They did, bro. Like, hold up. Let's look at that again. That was wild. That whole thing, how long did it take? So here we are.
San Ramon, so we're in the Bay Area, I believe.
Right?
$1 million raid.
That all? Huh.
Well, that's what its headline says.
Yeah, but I mean, looking at this is jewelry and watches, right?
1 gun, 2 guns.
3, no, that's a pickaxe.
2 crowbars. So we got a couple of gun guys,
And
a couple of crowbar guys busting the case. I got an axe guy.
It's a bag.
Case
and
is
then
open, empty the case.
And
The
they're
axe
gonna let
guy is still having trouble.
They've dropped a crowbar next to the door. There's a tire tool right there. Grand total of what? 3 minutes tops?
Maybe less. Yeah, and then they get locked in.
Yeah. I guess you're right. I guess they're lucky they did come packing, because without breaking it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars involved. Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's early in the morning or late at night, and we've got cars in the parking lot. So I wonder what day of the week and time of day it is.
There's a 6th car under the tree.
I think you're right.
I am right. He pulls off, comes out, and it cuts right before that car comes out.
They all flee in the same direction, which probably isn't the smartest thing in the world, but I'm not a criminal.
That is wild. Wow. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Just
What else
How?
can you say? And
I mean, California's living Grand Theft Auto. I mean, I admit, when I see the
they are.
ramp truck
Yeah,
parked on the side
California
of the road,
is a living video game.
I'll admit it. When I see that truck parked on the side of the road that they took the heavy equipment off and that ramp set up there, there's some part of my brain that says I'm supposed to gain some kind of achievement for making that jump. You got to do that thing, dude.
I got to do that thing. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius tonight. Thank you for the lovely turnout. We sure do appreciate that. We hope you have an edifying day tomorrow and a wonderful day after that, and a really fantabulous week in general. And we will see you next weekend, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. Stay out of trouble until then. Good night. Get off my lawn.